Oh!
What's going on? Kind of a big deal videos. Bodybuilding fans, as you all know, Kevin Levrone is making his comeback this year. Those who don't know likely aren't bodybuilding fans or maybe really are just getting into the sport. So Kevin Levrone, to give you some background, was a competitor in the 90s and 2000s. Um, Primarily, I guess his years, his more dominant years were in the 90s, and he was kind of phasing out in 2000. Now you guys can look up his old posing videos, his old routines. He's got some pretty impressive routines out there. His legs were, absolutely massive. He was well proportioned in the 90s. There is some debate over how his symmetry kind of fell off near the end. I wouldn't comment on that. I'm fairly, my, I never comment on anyone's legs because I know where that's going. My legs aren't really the best, and the older I get, I'm sure the worse my legs will be, because typically what we see in when bodybuilders age, the first thing that go are the wheels, and I'm not sure why that's the case. If it's the joints, if it's the heavy lifting, but that's typically something we see in older, like masters, grandmasters bodybuilding, especially grandmasters. If you look at the guys in their 60s, even the guys who are still competing in their 70s, they look great. Upper body, they still really hold a lot of mass, but their lower bodies are just completely, non-existent. Okay, and I'm not saying that's a general rule. I'm sure there's some exceptions. And talking about exceptions, Kevin Levrone is the exception. Now, I should have made this video, I don't know, a month and a half ago when I wanted to make it, because now there's a billion videos out on Kevin Levrone and, what people are anticipating. But this photo to my right, or maybe it's to my left on your screen, I don't know. That's the latest photo that's been leaked from RX Muscle. Dave Palumbo has a segment on it where he's talking to Chris Aceto, breaking it down. If you're familiar with this, Kevin Levrone's going into the Olympia, and he's 52, 51. I'm not sure. Some people are saying 53. He's definitely, I believe he's 52 is the accurate number. Anyways, that's kind of ambiguous at this point. I don't think he's released his age. But Kevin Levrone is a guy, and you can watch this in any of the videos. If you watch BioX3, Jerry Ward's channel, RX Muscle, they'll all share the same story about Kevin Levrone tearing his pec. I forget what year in the 90s. But Kevin Lebrone's notorious for this. He would be an average, not a very athletic-looking guy in his off season. He wouldn't train. I guess he'd lose a lot of his mass, and he would just take it super easy. His diet would be flexible, and the training component just wasn't there, as well as I guess the other techniques he would use to grow extremely muscular. So he, this one year in particular, he grew into a show within 12 weeks, or it may have been 16. But it was I think it was 12 actually, extremely short amount of time. And everybody was flabbergasted because they said, they told Kevin flat out it was impossible. And he did it. I mean, he managed to make it to the show, Olympia worthy, and I think he placed second that year. And that's the thing about Levrone. He was always competing when Flex Wheeler was there, when Ronnie Coleman was there. So, and again, Ronnie Coleman was one of these freaks of nature. He was unbeatable. So the question is, how is Kevin going to stack up against these guys if he brings his old package? And initially I think people had their doubts. They were cynical that he could come in looking big, hard, full, big legs, huge, vascular, whatever it may be. Tight skin. Tight skin is a problem for older guys. I know myself, I get absolutely shredded for a show. And one of the reasons I feel that I need to get absolutely shredded is because my skin isn't tight from being an overweight individual. At one point in my life, when I was bulking up, I just went too far. You guys can probably see in my transformation pics. And I got all this, love handle action and lower body fat going on, or lower stomach fat. And that kind of translated into loose skin. So even when I diet to extremes and I get to what I'm pretty sure is 3-4%, and my face disappears and it's gone, and I look like a complete crackhead, for lack of a better explanation or a better comparison to anything else. I just look like I'm gonna die. I still have a little bit of loose skin unless I fill it out correctly. So it's hard, and the older I get, I'm sure the looser it's gonna get, because your skin loses elasticity. The collagen in your skin doesn't stay tight. So it's a young man's game in essence, especially if you've had problems there in the past. So by these pictures, we see that Kevin really doesn't have a problem with skin. Elasticity. He looks like a 20-year-old, 30-year-old. Mind you, Dexter Jackson has also been able to keep in shape. I would hypothesize that someone like Dexter Jackson, who competed year after year after year, would have better odds of keeping that shape, because he's always been competing and never let it go. So he'd effectively be trimming down and not overbulking. See, Dexter brings in this consistent package time after time, which means that he's always, likely in his off season, he's floating around a good body fat. So he never really gets that distension and loose skin that some guys like Lee Priest used to do when he was in his off season. And Kevin Levrone, is the other extreme. He goes from huge to normal. He's been off, training, and he's just been, out of everything for years. I think it's, don't get me wrong, it's been about 10 years. He's decided to stop bodybuilding, and he lived like a normal guy. He's got a band. I would assume he was probably running around or walking around at like 160, 170, 180. Who knows? I think he may have gotten a little pudgy, skinny at one point. But that's speculation, because I really didn't follow Kevin that much when he wasn't bodybuilding. Now, that being said, these pictures say it all. Again, in bodybuilding, you've got to put people in a lineup, and you've got to compare them next to the guy, or you've got to compare them to the guys next to them. Like, these pictures, he looks Olympia worthy to me. If you give someone a picture of me when I'm show prepped and, doing a flex in the mirror really close, and I out-angled the mirror, I'm not going to say I'm Olympia worthy, but, I'll look pretty damn, huge. Whereas in person, I'm still a big guy, but what I'm trying to say is that a picture can be very deceptive. A picture can be angled a certain way to make your arms look a lot larger. From my personal experience, I've seen guys, including myself, who aren't near, professional bodybuilding worthy, just on an amateur scale, post selfies, and they look like they're friggin' ready to hit the Olympia. So that being said, it's not a good gauge of where Kevin Levrone really is at this point. However, they're pretty impressive, and he's got another 9 weeks to grow. And I used to have a roommate who used to say, you base evidence based on prior. So you base he used to always talk about people's character, because he was in credit. He was always he was giving out credit. He's like, we base what we would give out on people's history. So the only way to predict or to make some kind of projection is to look at the past. And by looking at the past, Kevin Levrone has proven time and time again that he does things that no one else can, like growing into a show in 12 weeks. And I don't just mean when people say growing into the show, like, their skin tightens up and they put on a couple pounds, 5, 8 pounds, and look really good, and it's a one-off. Kevin's done this a couple times, and we're talking about, assumption like 40 pounds of muscle. It's funny. I was watching what's his name, Jimmy Tiny Vest. He's got a channel. Sorry if I got your name wrong. You probably wouldn't watch this video, but if you are, he's got good informative videos. But he said nobody can put on 30 pounds in 1 year because he was criticizing Piana's cycle video, and I totally agree with him. No one can put on 30 pounds in a year, other than Kevin Levrone. I think you can put it on under a year. It's very rare that you're going to find someone with this genetic predisposition. So what probably goes on, there's physiological processes that are going on in his body, IGF production, likely things like his recovery, his protein synthesis. Cellularly, he's at a different level than us. And there's other factors, myostatin, and you guys can read about, how muscle is built. There's quite a bit of science behind it. But whatever it takes, Kevin Levrone has an accelerated process. He's like one of the X-Men. If for lack of a better term, he's probably got this mutant gene. And as far as we typically talk about mutations in people, like, an extra chromosome or an extra X chromosome will lead to something like, something like Down syndrome. But, that's not usually a positive mutation or a mutation this is a different type of mutation. Supraphysiological mutation. I'm sure some people have really heightened immune systems. Anyways, I'm not speculating. I'm not a scientist. All I'm saying is Kevin Levrone is special, and we've seen this time and time again, and I can't freaking wait for the Olympia, because this guy's the underdog, and that's the other thing I want to touch on. I know this video's getting to 12 minutes, but, he is the underdog, and Kevin believes in himself, and Jerry Ward said it too. You know what? The power of belief and visualization. I see Kai Green, I feel, does this quite a bit. He can visualize a goal, and that's what keeps him in it. And when I watch these videos and streams Kevin's putting on, because he puts on these updates, I would encourage you to subscribe to his Facebook page, and you'll get the feeds, and you might even be able to chat with him, which is really cool. Anyways, yeah, he's got this positive mindset, and it's phenomenal, and he's going to do it, man. He's going to do it. Judging by these pictures, I don't know. I'm thinking Dennis is out. So there's Dexter. There's Rolly Winkler, who's amazingly built. There's Phil Heath, obviously. Sean Roden. And Big Ramy is a real wild card because he's really redesigning his physique this year with Chris Aceto. So Ramy is a huge variable. And I think that Ramy will actually look sick this year, and maybe potentially top 3. I'm assuming. If Aceto if he can dial him in, like Ronnie Coleman needs to dial himself in, I think he'll be slightly bigger than Ronnie Coleman and tighter. The muscle maturity, maybe not yet, but maybe, because Ramy's he's an exception. He's got genetic mutations as well. Just like Levrone, those two are actual mutants, real mutants. So that's all I gotta say. I would hope that Kevin hits the top 5. It's an extremely competitive class, and Ramy has a super tight waist, and he's huge. He's like another Ronnie Coleman, in my opinion, if he can just put it all together. Phil has politics, and I'm not saying politics is really a big factor, but he does have the history, which helps. I mean, he's got a run, and Phil definitely has a good chance. Sean Roden, I wouldn't rule him out. Dexter Jackson, definitely been on a streak. Dexter could do anything. You never know. He might be. He could just very well take the Olympia. He could take that Sandow. So I'm not making any predictions. I'm not predicting. And Kevin's a total wild card. I don't know where he'll fall. But when you put him next to Johnny Jackson, and no offense to Johnny Jackson, great bodybuilder, but I saw him in Vancouver, not in person, but and I'm a huge fan of Ian Valliere, who was my coach and who did the Vancouvers as well. And I even think a guy who's like in his first year of competing could beat out guys like Johnny Jackson in a show. And anyways, top 10 for sure. Top 10, I can see it happening. Who knows? So Kevin Levrone, check out all his materials. He's definitely my role model right now, and I'm a huge fan. So kind of a big deal videos. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Peace out.